Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is on Creator Week, days 5, 6, and 7. Just looking back at some of the highlights, day 1, he let light be, and he separated the light from the darkness. Day 2, he separated the waters with the firmament. Day 3 was the land, and he saw it was good. And also on day 3 was vegetation, and he saw it was good. Day 4 was he put the sun, or the greater light, the lesser light, and the stars also. For signs in Moedim, please watch the earlier versions here. And now let's move on to day 5. Genesis 1, verse 20. And God said, "Let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly over the earth in the open expanse of the heavens." And God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good. Okay, a couple things here. One, here he's using that word bara for created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves. So this bara, this is the same word he uses in the verse 1, second word of the Bible, Bereshit bara Elohim, bara, to create from nothing. Okay? So this is the second time he's used that. I told you earlier that there were 3 times in Creator Week where he's going to use this word bara. Here's the second one. And the other thing that I notice is he talks about after their kind. He mentioned it twice. He mentioned it here with the birds and with the fish. And if I remember, back on day 3, this is Genesis 1:11. He said, and it says, "And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation." Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees on earth bearing fruit after their kind with seed in them. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit with seed in them after their kind. And God saw that it was good. Notice back on day 3, 3 times he says after their kind. And now he's saying it 2 more times, that things are reproducing after their kind. Okay, another thing in verse 21 that catches your attention is these great sea monsters. What are these that he's talking about? If you go ahead into Psalm 104, starting verse 25, it says, "There is a sea, great and broad, in which are swarms without number, animals both small and great. There the ships move along, and Leviathan, which you have formed to sport in it." Okay, this word Leviathan, in English, Leviathan is just a very large animal of some type. It's not a specific animal. But here, he's calling it Leviathan. Okay? And you also see it in the book of Job. Look in Job 41. God is asking Job, "Can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook, or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? I will not keep silent concerning his limbs, or his mighty strength, or his orderly frame." Verse 13, "Who can strip off his outer armor? Who can come within his double mail? Who can open the doors of his face? Around his teeth there is terror. His strong scales are his pride, shut up as a tight seal." Look at this, verse 18, "His sneezes flash forth light. Out of his mouth go burning torches, sparks of fire leap forth. His breath kindles coals, and a fire goes forth from his mouth. The sword that reaches him cannot avail, nor the spear, nor the dart, or the javelin. He regards iron as straw, bronze as rotten wood. His underparts are like sharp potsherds. What animal is he describing here? It's got scales, it's fire breathing. What is this thing that was created? And if it was created bara, where is it now? We're going to answer that in a second. But look also in Job 40, verse 15, starting. It says, behold now, Behemoth, which I made as well as you. He eats grass like an ox. All right, what is this? Behemoth, again, that's just a word in English for a big animal. What animal is it? He eats grass like an ox. Sounds kind of like an elephant. Verse 16, behold now, his strength in his loins and his power in his muscles of his belly. Verse 17, he bends his tail like a cedar. Well, that rules out an elephant. If his tail is like a cedar is this huge tree. An elephant's tail is like a piece of rope. So here we've got Leviathan, we've got Behemoth, we got these big animals that God had bara, that he created on day 5. And where are they? Well, this of course leads to the whole concept of dinosaurs. Okay, were there dinosaurs? Are there? What's the whole thing on that? Well, first of all, the word dinosaur wasn't even created until 1823. So, just because the Bible doesn't mention dinosaur, that has nothing to do with it because that word wasn't around. But he is describing things that are dinosauric. Okay? I think he created these dinosaurs on day 5. This whole thing with, millions of years, I don't believe it. Okay? The earth, 6,000 years old. That is a young earth we're dealing with. And all this creation stuff happened 6,000 years ago. Was the earth older than that? Don't know what the actual beginning was, but the animals, day 6, 6,000 years ago, or day 5 and day 6. Okay, well, so they were created on day 5, all these great creatures. And what happened to them? Well, remember back on day 2, whenever God separated the waters with a firmament. And we said that it would put like this bubble of water around the earth, and then there was water on the earth, and in between was this pocket of air. Well, because you had this bubble of water around the earth, it made the earth this oxygen-rich environment that animals and life thrived. Plants grew and grew and grew. Okay, up in the Arctic, you had huge plants growing. In the deserts, in Saudi Arabia, the Garden of Eden area, everything is blossoming. And animals and man were living long times. Methuselah lived 969 years. It's because he was in this great oxygen-rich environment, warm, inducing life. Then comes the flood. And when the flood occurred, all the water up above came down. And now you no longer have this same environment. You now get cold at the poles. And whenever the flood happened, all the plants and stuff that got buried under sediment and rocks and in great pressure, all of that turned to oil. That's why you got lots of oil in certain places on the planet. Remember, oil is decaying plant life. So why is there so much oil in the Arctic? There must have been plant life there at some point. When? Okay, pre-flood. All right, well, that's my take on the dinosaurs. We had them after the flood. The environment changed. It was no longer oxygen rich. Dinosaurs, big animals, small lungs, they suffocated out. I think Noah would have taken them on the ark. He would have not taken full-size Brontosaurus or whatever, but he would take either the eggs or the babies or whatever. But they did then die out after the flood. So there, take that. All right, Genesis 1:22. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on earth. and there was Erev, and there was Boker, day 5. So he's telling the fish and the birds to be fruitful and multiply. No worries there. And again, he ends with, there was Erev and Boker. Remember, Erev and Boker is usually translated as there was evening and there was morning. But we looked at it in part 1 of this series, and we realized that Erev was more chaos, obscure chaos, disorder. And Boker is things that are in control, in order. Okay, so that works out nice here. There was Erev, there was chaos, and there was order, day 5. I think we should refer each day that way, not evening and morning. Okay? And while we're here, and talking about these 6 days or 7 days of creation, we should point out that these days are 24-hour days. There are those who believe in like the long day theory, that, okay, God created everything in 7 days, but a day back then was more than 24 hours. A day was 1,000,000 years, and so, or 10 million, whatever. Okay, well, throughout the Bible, a day is a 24-hour period. Okay, that's pretty standard. And there's no way that you could have a 1,000,000-year day. For example, on day 3, he made the land, saw it was good, and then he covered the land with vegetation and saw it was good. That vegetation cannot wait 1,000,000 years until day 4's greater light and lesser light. They need light tomorrow, not 1,000,000 years from now. And they also can't wait 2,000,000 years or 20,000,000 years for day 5, whenever the insects and the birds show up to pollinate these plants. You understand? So they have to be 24-hour days, and if they weren't, God would have mentioned it, and he didn't. So there. Okay. Day 6. Genesis 1:24, starting, and God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after their kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw that it was good. Wow, a lot there. Okay, let's just look at this after their kind, because here he's saying it 5 more times. If we look total throughout the entire week, we see on day 3, God said it 3 times, after their kind. And on days 5 and 6, he said it 7 times total, for a total of 10 times all week. So I think he's pointing out that animals and plants reproduce after their kind. He must have known that there was going to be these crazy people who started pushing this theory of evolution, that we evolved from slugs or slime or monkeys or whatever. And it's no, we were created in the image of God, as we're going to see in a few verses. And we were not evolved from some lesser being. And so he makes a point of saying it 10 times, that things reproduce after their kind. Okay? So much for the theory of evolution. Just remember, an elephant plus an elephant equals an elephant. And a rhinoceros plus a rhinoceros equals a rhinoceros. And what would you get if you crossed an elephant and a rhinoceros? Elephino. Okay, now, Genesis 1:26. This is the big one. And God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. All right, we've done this talk, this little bit in a lot of different videos, but it's so important. he's creating man. And he says, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Notice, first of all, he's using plural pronouns, again, referring back or pointing to his complex unity. The three, there's plural. And in English, when it says, in our image, according to our likeness, it begs the question, what's the difference between image and likeness? Well, remember, there are two different words in Hebrew. Let's get through them quickly. The one is betzomenu. In betzomenu, the ba in front is in. The enu at the end is our. The core word there is tsal. Tsal represents a shadow or the phantom, the spiritual side. And kiddumatenu, the ke is two, the enu is our. The root word, the core there is dam. Dam is the Hebrew word for blood. So he says, let us make man in our betzomenu, in our spiritual image, kiddumatenu, in our physical image. We are made spiritually and physically like God. This whole concept of spiritual and physical, it just goes all through the Bible. We see it in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens, the spiritual, and the earth, the physical. You see it in John chapter 3, whenever Nicodemus came to Jesus. Remember, and he says, what do I have to do to be saved? And he says, you must be born again, right? Wait a minute. You writing down the time? Mm-hmm. Good girl. Okay, what was the last slide we did? The physical and the... Okay. We see it again in John chapter 3, verses 1 through 8, when Nicodemus, the Pharisee, comes to Yeshua by night. Okay, and he says he knows that he has come from God, and Jesus tells him that he must be born again. Nicodemus says, how can a man be born when he is old? He can go back into his mother's womb. And Jesus said, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. You see, he's pointing out this whole spiritual and physical. You have to be born of the water, that's the physical, and of the Spirit. Okay? So, and by the way, that entire encounter there in John chapter 3 with Nicodemus and Yeshua, if you count up the number of times the word born is used, it totals 8, which I think is kind of clever because remember, 8 is the number for new beginnings, and Yeshua, Jesus, is telling Nicodemus that he must be born again, a new birth, right? Very nice. Okay, we also see in this, we're made in his image and his likeness. Remember his name. His title is Elohim. His name is Yahweh. Yud-He, Vav-He. Again, I'm not positive on how to pronounce it, but we'll go with Yahweh. And it's a Yud, a He, a Vav, and a He. If I write those 4 letters vertically, you know what? It looks like an image of man. You got the Yud as a head, He is 2 arms, the Vav is a body, and the He is 2 legs. We are in his image. We're even in the image of his name. I think that's very clever. By the way, his name, Yud-He, Vav-He, the Yud is 10, He is 5, Vav is 6, He is 5. His name adds up to 26. And the reason I'm telling you this is because that verse we just finished reading, where it says, and God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, starting in verse 25 and 26 in the Hebrew, if you start with that first Yud, and if you count ahead 26 letters, you get a He. And you count 26 letters, you get a Vav, and you count 26 letters, you get another He. So he spells out his name, Yud-He, Vav-He, in the verse where he's creating us in the spiritual and in the physical. And if you go further down in verse 26 to the Yud and count backwards 26 letters, you come to the Hey. Count backwards 26, you come to the Vav. Count backwards 26, you come to a Hey. So he has his name Yud Hey Vav Hey spelled forwards every 26 letters, and his name is spelled backwards every 26 letters. So he's incorporated his name in there twice, which is interesting because in this verse we're created in his image and his likeness in both of them. So he put his name in there twice in the same passage where it says that. I think that's very clever. Also in that same passage, starting just 3 verses earlier, Genesis 1:22, if you put it all in Hebrew, he also has Abraham's name spelled out every 50 letters, which that's going to be kind of cool, I think, there. All right. Genesis 1:27, still on day 6. And it says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. All right. What do we need to point out here? There's the in verse 27 it says, God created man in his own image. That word image that he's using here is the Betzomenu. Okay? He's not talking about here about anything physical here. This is spiritual. God created man in his own Betzomenu, spiritual image. And notice he's using bara again. This is the third time in Genesis where creating out of nothing. Okay? And so he's creating the spiritual side of man. In the Betzomenu of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So Genesis 1:27 is the creation of man, but the spiritual side. If you jump ahead to Genesis 2:7, it says, and the Lord God, Yahweh Elohim, formed Adam, man, of the dust of the ground, Adamah, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Notice in 2:7, this one doesn't talk about the Betzomenu. This one's talking about the Kidmatenu, the physical side. This is where God actually takes the dust and forms man. You got it? And it's interesting, man is the word Adam. Adam is an Aleph, Dalet, Mem. Aleph is God's letter. Dalet Mem spells Dam, spells blood. So you take God and blood, Aleph and Dam, and put them together, you get man, Adam, the Hebrew word for man. And it's kind of clever. No, it's not kind of clever. It's extremely clever that he took this Adam and he made it from the Adamah. Adamah is the Hebrew word for the ground, the dirt, the dust. Okay? So we actually are from the dust. Our name, Adam, comes from Adamah. And then he breathed into the nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Notice in this 2:7, it's now saying that Yahweh Elohim, the Lord God, formed. If you'll notice, all through Genesis chapter 1, he is referred to as Elohim. Elohim, his title, God, God, Elohim, Elohim. I don't know how many times it says that. It's a lot. He's not known as or referred to as Yahweh Elohim until after man is created in Genesis chapter 2. Well, that's kind of interesting. I'm sure he had the name prior, but we were not given the name. And we're not given the name maybe because there was no man to use the name to worship him. It wasn't until man is created, chapter 2, that he's known as Yahweh Elohim. Okay, Genesis 1:28. It says, and God blessed them. We're talking about this man and wife, or this, not man and wife yet, this man and woman, okay, that God created Betzelmenu in his image. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on earth." You know, this is kind of interesting. This is the first command to mankind from God. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." Right? He was just created a verse ago. This is the first command. I'm wondering, what is the last command that God gave to man? Well, you know, if you go into the book of Matthew and then Brit Hadashah, and I'm assuming you all realize Yeshua, Jesus, is God. And he was God who left his throne, came to earth to be our sacrifice, our perfect, innocent korban. He took the punishment for us. So when he was down here on earth and he's as a man, and at some point he's about to go back, and before he goes back, he gives his last command to man, and it is Matthew 28:19. "Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I command you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So it's interesting. In the first command to mankind is be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. And the last command that he gives is to go and make disciples of all the nations. That's be fruitful and multiply the earth into his new kingdom. That's kind of nice, right? Okay, reading on, verse 129, and God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed, it shall be food for you. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth which has life, I have given every green plant for you," and it was so. Okay, you know what I've noticed in this is he says he's giving every green plant, right? Every green plant. What about meat? Is there any meat involved in this diet? Well, I don't think there was any meat at the time. We're supposed to be eating the green plants. The reason you can't eat meat is because something would have to die for you to eat meat. And there was no death yet. Nothing died. So there were no meat eaters. There was no meat to eat. But fortunately, you can make good things with the vegetables. All right. Genesis 1:31. And God saw and God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was Erev, and there was Boker, day 6. All right. Now he's seeing everything is very good. And there was chaos, and there was order, day 6. Speaking of chaos and order, let's look at the order of God just in the 6 days of creation we've covered so far. On day 1, he allows light to be. The corresponding day would be day 4. Day 4 is when he puts the sun, moon, and stars. These are things that produce light. On day 2, he separates water with air. On day 5, he fills the water with fish and he fills the air with birds. On day 3, he makes land and vegetation. On day 6, the corresponding, he makes animals and man to cover the land and eat the vegetation. There is an order so far in this. And you'll notice good, 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 good. 7 times he saw things that are good. Okay? Now, when we're looking at the order in Genesis chapter 1, we've already told you that 3 times he baras things. He barawed the heavens and the earth in verse 1. He barawed the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves in verse 21. And he barawed man in his own image in verse 27. He saw things 7 times in verses 4, 10, 12, 18, 21, 25, and 31. God saw that it was good. 7 times. You know what? This makes me think, I wonder what is the next thing that God sees that's announced in the Bible. You understand the question? We know 7 times he saw things in the Creator Week. What's the next thing God sees? It turns out it's in Genesis 6, chapter 5. No, Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. It says, "Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." So the very next thing God sees after Creator Week is the wickedness of man. What a sad commentary on man, right? All right, and this leads then to the flood and the starting over. We also see in Genesis, the whole chapter, we're trying to look at the big picture here of things. God commanded 3 plus 7 times. He commanded 10 things in Creator Week. Verse 1, or number 1, verse 3, be light. There was a command. The second thing he commanded, let there be an expanse in the waters. Let the waters below be gathered into one place. Let the earth sprout vegetation. You see these commands? He made 10 of them in Creator Week. And those 10 commands followed Genesis 1:1. And what's Genesis 1:1? 7 words and 28 letters. 28 is 7 times 4, right? There is one other verse in the Bible that has 7 words and 28 letters. It's Exodus 20, verse 1. And it says, "And God spoke all these words, saying." That verse has 7 words and 28 letters. And what do we know follows 7 words and 28 letters? 10 commands. Every time you see 7 words and 28 letters, it's followed by commands. And here in Exodus 20, he gives the 10 commandments. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make any graven images. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet. How clever. How clever. Okay. More into his order in Genesis 1, the whole chapter. The first 3 verses contain 3 cubed words. 3 cubed is 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 is 27 words in Genesis 1. The next 7 verses contain 7 cubed letters. 7 cubed. 7 times 7 is 49 times 7 is 343. Remember all the 3s and 7s and 37s and 73s and 137s that he's weaving in. Well, here he's doing it again. And then after the next 21 verses is the rest of the chapter. And 21 verses is 3 times 7. So he gives you the number of, in Genesis chapter 1, he gives it to you in the number of words, 27, 3 times 3 times 3, the number of letters, 7 cubed, and the number of verses, 3 times 7. There's his 3s and 7s weaving in even more. Okay, now, while we're talking about Creator Week, excuse me, I wanted to know how many words did he use to explain this creation. So I'm going to go back through and I'm going to mark down all the unique words in creation. In Genesis 1:1, Bereshit. Well, that's a unique word. We haven't seen it before in the Bible. How could we? It's the first verse. It's the first word. Bereshit is a unique word. Bara is a unique word. Elohim. Et. Hashemayim. Now, the 6th word is Va'et. We're not going to count that as a unique word because we already used et in the 4th word. We already counted it. Haaretz. So there are 6 unique words in Genesis 1:1. In the 2nd verse, you have the word was. And I'm going to put all the forms of be. Was, is, were, will be. That's all one unique word. But there's was. Formless, tohu, vabohu is a unique word. Choshek, darkness. You understand? We're going to add them all up. Spirit. Verse 3, you have said. God said, be light. Light is a unique word. Be, we've already counted. And we're going to just go through and write them, all the unique words. Day 5, day and night. Day 6, he has a firmament, rakia. Remember this one? Okay, day 12, verse 12. No, it wasn't 12. Verse 8, he talks about day 2, right? The 2nd day, day 2. Verse 10, he talks about the seas. 11, we got trees and plants and seeds and sprouting. Okay, the day 3 is, the word 3 shows up in verse 13. Greater light, lesser from day 4. Here they all are, right? Cattle on day 6. Ground, Adamah. Food, that's a nice word. Male and female show up in verse 27. Green shows up in verse 30. 6 in verse 31. And then we're also going to spill over into chapter 2 because Creator Week actually goes from Genesis 1:1 until Genesis 2:3. So in this 7th day, you have the word Shabbat, sanctify. Okay. If I list them all out, it turns out there are 92 unique words that God used to describe creation. And here they all are, all 92 of them. It just so happens that if you look at the periodic table of elements, there are 92 naturally occurring elements on the planet. These are elements you can go out and dig a hole and find this element. Granted, on the periodic chart, there are additional elements that go beyond 92, and they throw some electron on the outer ring and they name it after themselves, Johnonium, and it's in some petri dish lab in Berkeley, California. I'm not counting those man-made elements. I'm counting the naturally occurring, you can find them in a planet, on the planet. And I think it's clever that God takes 92 words to describe how he took 92 elements and formed the heavens and the earth. Very clever. Okay, day 7. This is Genesis chapter 2. It says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their hosts. By the 7th day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the Shabbat from all his work which he had done. And God blessed the Shabbat, the 7th day, and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created to do." Okay, in those 3 verses, starting actually in Genesis 1:31, if you take that passage we've just read in the Hebrew, take the last letter of verse 31 is a yud and count every 7 letters, and he spells out Israel throughout verse 1 and into verse 2 of chapter 2. And that's pretty cool. Every 7 letters, Israel. And if you think it's just a coincidence, he also does it in the same passage. He spells out Israel every 50 letters. And we've seen how he uses 50, 50, 50 in other videos we talked about with the Jubilee years and 50, 50, 50. So, yeah, he's got Israel hidden every 7 letters and every 50 letters in the same passage. Okay, you know what I've noticed? If you look at day 7, let me see here. Thus, if he completed on the host, 7th day completed his work, done, and the rest of Shabbat, done, the rest of his work which he had created to do. You know what? You know what is missing in day 7? It does not say there was Erev and there was Boker day 7. Wow. Okay. Did God forget to put it in? I don't think so. God doesn't forget things, right? This book, as you've seen, it is so incredibly perfect. He doesn't forget. Well, maybe there was no evening and morning on day 7. Well, that's ridiculous. He's made the day and he's got everything wound up and it's all running. There was an evening and there was a morning. But maybe Erev and Boker shouldn't be defined as evening and morning. If you define it as Erev and Boker, chaos and order, now it makes sense that that's not in day 7. Why? Because on day 6, it said, and God saw all that he had created, and it was very good. At the end of day 6, everything was very good. On day 7, there was no Erev that needed to be bokered. Yes, there was an evening and a morning on day 7, but that's not what he's announcing every day. Every day he's announcing there was chaos at the beginning of the day, and then there was order at the end of the day. God took each of the 6 days and ordered the chaos. Nice. All right. Okay. Now, I want to talk about one last thing here before we wind this up. The Hebrew word for truth. We've talked about this in other videos, but it is so spectacular, and how he weaves it into Genesis 1, you need to see. Okay, the Hebrew word for truth is amet. It's an aleph, it's a mem, and it's a tav. The word adds up. Aleph is 1, mem is 40, tav is 400. The word adds up to 441. We know God's perfect complex unity is 3. His perfection is 7. 3 times 7 is 21. And if you square 21, God's perfect number there, 21, if you square it, you get God's truth, 441. And that 441 breaks down into 3 times 7 times 3 times 7, more of his 3s and 7s. Also, if you want to know the truth, look where these letters of truth show up in the Hebrew alphabet. It's the first letter is aleph, the middle letter is mem, the last letter is tav. If you want to know the truth, you must look at the beginning, the middle, and the end of whatever you're discussing. And that's what you're going to get, the whole big picture. Make sense? Then you will know the emet. Then you will know the truth. Also, if you have the word truth and you take aleph out of it, remember aleph is God's letter. So emet minus aleph equals met. Met is the Hebrew word for death. All right? So truth without God is death. I like that picture. Another thing about truth is every letter of truth stands on 2 legs. And there's a verse in Deuteronomy 19, verse 15. It says, on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter shall be established. So, every letter of truth stands on 2 legs. That's interesting, because if you take the opposite of truth, which is sheker, that's the word for falsehood. And you'll notice every letter of sheker stands on 1 leg. The shin is kind of wobbly, they're only like a W, and then you have a kuf, 1 leg, and a resh. Also, the 3 letters that spell falsehood, shin, kuf, resh, they are all lumped together at the end of the alphabet. And they're, if you make a little hole with your finger and you can look through here, I can see just those 3 letters. I see a kuf, a resh, and a shin. I see the 3 letters. They're not in the right order as the word sheker, by the way. Every letter's in the wrong place. But I can see the word sheker. Notice, I'm not getting the big picture. I don't see the whole thing. I'm just seeing a part of it. I'm seeing the lie, the falsehood. All right? And that was just a little extra bonus I'm throwing in there for you. Okay, now let's go back to Genesis 1:1. Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. Those first 3 words, Bereshit, bara, and Elohim, they end in a tav. Bara ends in an aleph, and Elohim ends in a mem. Well, what do you notice about those 3 letters? Tav, aleph, mem. Those are the 3 letters that spell emet, truth. The only thing is they're in the wrong order. In fact, every letter is in the wrong place for truth. But notice, truth is there, it's just out of order. It's tohu vabohu. Okay? Then we come to Genesis 2:3. This is the last verse of Creator Week. God blessed the Shabbat and sanctified it, made it holy, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created to do. The last 3 words of Creator Week are bara, Elohim, lasot. Bara ends in aleph. Elohim ends in mem. Lasot ends in tav. The last 3 letters of the last letters of the last 3 words of Creator Week spell emet. How clever that now truth is established at the end of the week. I think that's beautiful. All right? All right. So that covers Creator Week. Thank you for watching. God bless. May God get the glory, and may God get the honor, and may God get the praise for putting this beautiful stuff together. And let me tell you, my friends, if you're watching this, you know, we're not asking you for money. We're not asking you for anything. We're just putting this out there. And if you're not sharing it, shame on you. You know, if you have a light, you don't put it under a bushel. Send these videos to your friends. Get them out there. Let's go. Don't make me come. Ugh. All right. All right, we'll talk to you soon. But first, we've got a bonus. Okay, here's the bonus. Remember the letter Vav. Vav was the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Vav is a picture of a nail or a hook. Vav is also an upright man. Vav is in the 6th word of the Bible. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va et haaretz. Va et. The va is and. Remember, nails connect things. Vav is and. All right. And Vav is also an upright man. You can see he looks like an upright man. There's a straight up and down. He's got a little head there. Okay. Vav is the number of man. And I just want to give you some examples of that. For example, there are 6 words for man throughout the Bible. Adam in Genesis 1:26, Ish in Genesis 2:24, Enosh in Job 15:14, Gever in Job 34:7, and in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 11:7 refers to man as Anur, and Matthew 26:24 refers to man as Anthropos. Okay, so man's number is 6. There's 6 words defining man. You'll see throughout the Bible these examples of man. In John chapter 2, verse 6, at the wedding in Cana, it says, and there were set there 6 water pots of stone. Okay? Remember, and Jesus said, hey, fill those 6 water pots with water, and then he turned the water to wine. Why were there 6 water pots? 6 represents man. And these water pots were representing the condition of man at the time. They were cold, stone, dead, empty vessels. That was man. And Jesus, Yeshua, had them filled with water, and he turned that water as inorganic, dead, and he turned that water into wine, something that had life, fermentation, life, you understand? This picture of Jesus bringing life to man is shown in the 6 water pots. All right? In the end of the book, Revelation 13, it says, here is wisdom. Let him who hath understanding count the number of the beast. For it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. This is talking about this bad man that's coming at the end of days, the Antichrist, right? And it says the number of his name, and his number is 666. All right? Everybody knows about this 666 thing. And this Antichrist, by the way, another place where you'll see this Antichrist is in Daniel 9:26. Now, I don't know how much you've studied Daniel chapter 9, but the last 4 verses of Daniel chapter 9 are probably the most incredible prophecy in the Bible. And I think we should do a Tanakh talk on just those 4 verses. Put that on the list of things to do. But look at Daniel 9:26. It says, then after 62 weeks, in Hebrew it's a shabuim, a week there is a 7-year period. After 62 7-year periods, but that's not the point of what we're talking here, but just know that that's what that's referring to. Then after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be a war. Desolations are determined. Look at the part in the center. It says, the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. What does that mean? Who are these people? That's what we want to find out here. Watch. The people, we don't know who they are right now. The prince who is to come, this is one of the names of Antichrist. Okay? So now it can be read, the people of the Antichrist will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Remember, this is a prophecy that Daniel's making, is something that's going to happen. This is made 300-400 years before Jesus shows up. You understand? So this is long before, and it says, he's prophesying that the people of the Antichrist are going to destroy the city and the sanctuary. What's the city? The city is Jerusalem. What's the sanctuary? That's the temple in Jerusalem. So it says, there's some people, the people of the Antichrist will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Anybody know, anybody remember who destroyed the city, Jerusalem, and the temple? In 70 AD, the Roman army led by the future Emperor Titus, he's the one who besieged and conquered Jerusalem. And the siege ended on August 30 of 70 AD with the burning and the destruction of the Second Temple. So now we know who destroyed the city and the sanctuary. It was the Roman future Emperor Titus. So the Romans will destroy the city and the sanctuary. That's what you can say. And who are the Romans? They are the people of the Antichrist. They are the people of the prince who is to come. Looking back from this year, you can look back and you can see history and how it was fulfilled. But Daniel had no idea that these people from the Roman Empire were going to destroy the city and the sanctuary. Okay? So we know Antichrist comes from the Roman Empire. And there's going to be a revived Roman Empire. It never really did die away. The Roman side of it died off in like 476. And then there was the Western Roman Empire. And the Eastern Roman Empire, the one based in Constantinople, it flourished until around the 1500s and the Ottomans, and then it kind of fizzled away. But none of them were completely destroyed. And remember, the Roman Empire is massive. When I say Roman Empire, I'm not talking about Italy. There was no Italy during Jesus' time or during Daniel's time. I'm not even talking about Vatican or anything about that. We're talking about the Roman Empire. It covered all of North Africa. It covered Europe. It covered all the way up into England, all the way up to Hadrian's Wall, up near the Scottish border. It was in Ukraine. It was in the Middle East. The Roman Empire was massive, okay? And so when it says the people of the Antichrist will destroy the city and the sanctuary, it's the people of the Roman Empire, okay? Which is also letting us know that the Antichrist is coming from this revived Roman Empire. Where is he coming from? Is he coming from Italy? Maybe. I don't know. It could be North Africa. It could be Northern England. You understand? Roman Empire. Speaking of the Roman Empire and the Roman things, remember your Roman numerals. The first 6 Roman numerals, you have I and V, X, L, C, and D. If I put in the values of each of these, and I'm going to add up the first 6 Roman numerals, remember D is 500, C is 100, L is 50, X is 10, V is 5, I is 1, it adds up to, oh, look at that, 666, a number of man, oh, ooh, okay. Also, there is a religious leader over the Roman Empire. He's based in Rome, he's based in the Vatican, right? The Pope. The Pope is known as the Vicar of the Son of God. Okay, well, we know who the Son of God is. That's Jesus, Yeshua. And what is a vicar? Well, the word vicar comes from the word vicarious. Vicarious means in place of, right? I do a lot of traveling, and there are a lot of people who travel vicariously with me, okay? I'm traveling in place of them. They're following along with my pictures and my stories, okay? So vicarious is in place of. A vicar is someone who is in place of the Son of God. And that's the Pope, what he claims to be. He is God's representative for Jesus on earth. I don't think God set it up that we should have someone. We have God and we have Yeshua, Jesus, our mediator. He is the mediator, and we can talk to God through Jesus. We don't need this earthly man who is taking the place of Jesus. You understand? That's my belief. But his title in the Latin is Vicarius Filii Dei. All right? And you notice that some of those letters are Roman numerals. The V, vicarious, and there's an I and there's a C, okay? And there's the U. Remember in the U, they always make it into a V. Filiae, Dei, okay? And we look at just the letters in his title that have Roman numerals in them, and we add them all together, and it also adds up to 666. This Antichrist character is going to be coming from the revived Roman Empire, of which the Vatican is the spiritual leader of this revived Roman Empire. The Vatican, I think, is the modern day morphing of Babylon. Babylon was the original kind of enemy of Israel, and this is the new Babylon. Read Revelation 17, and it'll explain very well. We're talking about the Vatican here. Anyway, again, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. God bless. Bye-bye.